All right, well, let's start. So, welcome. Today, we're going to talk about race and the need for diversity in clinical trials. Which I know it's funny when I really wanted to do an event on this topic, and it was almost like it was meant to happen. I went on LinkedIn, and then you're popping up, and I don't even think we were linked at the time, or we had people that were linked between us. And I was like, well, if this is not a sign, then I reached out to you on LinkedIn. Like he's talking about exactly what I want to talk about. And I like the fact that, people can talk about it in theory, but I really wanted someone to talk about it in terms of not just talk about, but we all know this is an issue, but
Right.
also just what are we doing about it? And that's why I really was excited to talk to you about this. So maybe to start, you can tell us about yourself. You're chairman and CEO of Clinarc. So maybe a little bit about your role there and what you guys do.
So my company is focused on expanding clinical trial access and participation. Um, I got my start in clinical research as a site identification specialist. To be honest, I got very lucky and got the job. I tell a lot of people, I started out working at a doggy daycare. I thought that was going to be it for me.
There's nothing wrong with doggy daycare.
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. It's not, but yeah, it's not fun. It's not as fun as you think it is.
Yeah.
But I did that for about 3 weeks, and I got the job as a site identification specialist at INC Research.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so I worked there for I think it was about a year or two, and I was able to learn a lot. To be honest with you, you know, I got to speak to doctors around the world, all that good stuff, make all those 1,000 phone calls to doctors, and a couple of them hung up on me, but it was all right.
Yeah, they do that.
Yeah, right, right. And then I progressed into, after that, I worked at the site level, pretty much as I kind of functioned as a coordinator kind of role.
Hmm.
We pretty much got this site up and running from nothing. I mean, when I got there, I didn't know I needed a job at the moment. So I was like, let me blast out my resume. They called me in for an interview, and I show up, and it's just an empty warehouse. And we get there, and they said, "Oh yeah, so we have to turn this into a research site." I mean, like there was nothing. I can hear my voice when I walk into this place, and so we turned it into a research site. We got a chamber in there. It was actually an allergy study. So we got a chamber in there, got patients coming in, all that good stuff. So I got to really see what it was like to get a site up and running and see how that dynamic worked, trying to hit time points and all that crazy stuff. And I also got to experience what it felt like when the CRA would show up and give you a hard time. But
Lots of queries.
right. Yeah, you got to fix everything. But yeah, and then after that, I worked for a company called CTI, and that's where I got to learn all the pieces. I was part of their research associate team, and that role within the company, you get to experience a lot of stuff. So I was able to experience working with project managers, working with medical affairs, working with IT, helping them out. Um, I mean, it just go down the list. I got to really experience a lot there, and then after that, I went to work as what was I doing after that? I've had so many like random roles. I worked at MedPace after that.
Oh, I have
Then,
that
yeah,
face as well.
I worked as a feasibility coordinator, and that's when I started to realize like feasibility is a thing that I like to do. That's
Hmm.
my passion. So I did that for about 6 months, and then I got this great opportunity to work for BioClinica, where I was a global marketing feasibility analyst. And then I got to really see from there. I got to see how my work as a feasibility person, how that really contributes to the marketing aspect of the operation. And I got to really help drive the way we approach marketing strategies and all that stuff. And then after that I did another feasibility job, working with a CRO as a similar role, feasibility analyst, but it was focused on oncology. So I got to really develop an understanding of how challenging the oncology protocols are, and a lot of those, and really got to see how to navigate those protocols in terms of developing the strategies and making sure that we're trying to capture the populations that we need to capture and make sure those people are included. But all in saying all of that, all of my experience led me to create ClinArc. I've always wanted to create my company, but I didn't really know when I was going to create it, but I knew I wanted to. And back in 2019, something just said, go for it. And I did. And bam, COVID happened. and then now it's just like, it's insane, to be honest with you, but it's a good insane. I'm glad that I was able to create something that's needed. But that is my story in a very big nutshell.
That's great. My background, I didn't think even of I was going to be in the research field. I started as a registered nurse. And so I was a registered nurse specializing in critical care. And then I would just get pulled, to help do a consent here and there. And I was like, well, what's this all about? You know what I mean? Where are these people walking around as I'm like lifting people and doing all kinds of stuff? What are they doing? So, I got lucky. I started pediatrics research.
Mhm.
And then I ended up working for pharma. And then I worked for CROs after as well, mostly operations because of the nursing background. If you're doing a biologic study, you actually even know how to do the IV, and so it kind of lends itself well. But I used to work at INC research as well. So there's
really,
yeah.
See, they
Where
groomed
do you,
everyone.
INC is at some point you work there, right? Another city of health. But where are you located? I'm in Toronto, but where are you?
I'm in Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's INC in Ohio?
So there was,
Oh,
but
okay.
the office is no longer there. But there was, and they actually they're now part of, I think it's now like
Cineos Health.
Yeah. So yeah. But there was an office here in Cincinnati.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, great. So so in your experience, is that where you started thinking, okay, there's a diversity issue here in clinical trials? Did you see that more on the feasibility side or on the coordinator side, or all of
it? To be honest, on the team that I was on when I first worked at INC Research was actually pretty diverse.
Okay.
But it had to be diverse because we were interacting with people from all around the world. I mean, I would find myself on the phone with someone in Italy, and I'm just like, they pick up the phone and I don't know what they're saying, and I'm just, I didn't know what to do, but it also prepared me, down the road for those similar situations.
Mm-hmm.
But as I progressed and went to other companies, I started to see how that lack of diversity was really an issue, and not just from a patient perspective, also from like leadership roles and whatnot, and those decision-making positions. So I would say within the department that I was in initially, starting my career, it was pretty diverse. Mm-hmm. But as I got to advance and see more things and grow up, so to speak, I started to find myself as like the only, person of color or the only person of like myself in the room.
No, I found that too. I find study teams are not bad. I mean, in Toronto, we're very diverse here. So study teams, I don't find the issue. Like you said, it's the leadership level where the decisions are made. You definitely see that. And also investigators. Yes. When you get into situations where, you're looking at where to run those studies, you're looking at key opinion leaders in prestigious hospitals and centers, you start getting into the situation where you're not really seeing many minority, if any, at all investigators. And you're also looking at sites that, they have a lot of population, but they're not very diverse because a lot of minorities are not seeing the top doctor, the top GI doctor or the top whatever doctor, right? So.
Yep. And another thing that I noticed from my feasibility experience is like, I'm a data guy. I naturally that's just how my brain operates. I think in numbers. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people that I interact with is probably just like, this guy's crazy. All he says is numbers. But I took the time out to understand what was happening. Mm-hmm. When you look at the numbers, when you look at the data, you can see it. And I would literally look at like, when you look at all the sites that have participated on clinical trials, right? 82% of those sites have conducted 10 trials or less.
Hmm.
And that should tell you something. We're not spreading the love. We're not going to different different places. We're going to the same sites over and over again.
Yeah.
Um, and that creates problems because we may be missing communities that may need that may need that that interaction or that clinical trial access. So we all, and another problem is that we also go to we all use the same tools
Hmm.
to solve the
Do it the
problem,
exact same
right?
way.
Yeah, and I watch it happen, and I'm just like, wow, I'm looking at the problem right now, and it's like I can't do anything about it because everyone's doing it.
Hmm.
So when I bring it up, everybody thinks I'm crazy. And like so I'm going to use Sightline as an example. I'm sorry, Sightline, if you hear this, I don't. There's nothing. I'm sorry, but when you use so when you use a software, right, that essentially helps you filter all these sites, right, and everybody does it the same way. Well, you're basically you're essentially limiting the sites that you're going to go to because you're only using one type of tool to
Hmm.
find sites. So you're not going to get those naive sites because you're only going to the ones that are in this database. So we have to step outside of our way of thinking. We have to really expand the way we approach the feasibility process, because the feasibility process, to be honest, I think is where it starts to begin. At least from my experience, when we create those strategies around, the trials and all that stuff, and have to put in the proposals and whatnot. I think that spot is something that we need to focus on a little bit more, because a lot of times we pick sites on speed and experience and all that stuff, and we forget to say, hey, if say they exhaust their database, well, in that community, are there even patients nearby?
Hmm.
And we don't really answer those questions.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. Tufts did like an analysis of a bunch of studies, and they found that there was consistently lack of minorities and diversity in the clinical trials, and that's probably because they just keep doing it the same way. Why is it going to change? It's just going to be the same thing over and over. It's interesting with this pandemic. Obviously, I mean, this issue is not a new thing. You know what I mean? We have, and when we talk about diversity, it's, gender. We have lack of women still. We have lack of minorities. There's also the age issue. We don't have older adults, where, those are the older kind of over 55, over 65 even. They're the ones on 7 or more drug classes that are impacted by a lot of the drugs that are going to market. And then you also pediatrics on the other side as well, in terms of the age thing, and then disability. So if you're a minority and a woman and maybe have a disability and maybe you don't live in a that's like a unicorn. That's like a
Good luck.
unicorn in a study. Like, forget about it.
Good
Forget
luck.
about it. But I mean, this is not a new thing, but like the pandemic has really, I think that everyone now, you have some people that have cancer and some people that have, but now everybody is affected by the pandemic, and it's really kind of highlighted kind of that racial inequality. And now everyone's thinking about, well, what about these clinical trials? And now they're like, what? There's not diversity in clinical trials? Like, what? This is crazy.
No.
And so, I mean, I guess, do you feel like this is obviously an opportune time to really discuss this, and hopefully sponsors all the way to sites, everyone's kind of taking some action and rethinking how they do research?
Absolutely. I think this is one of the best times to discuss it while it's bad. At least, I mean, what I found throughout my career is that I was always the guy that would bring up like those questions that, no one wanted to hear in the room.
Hmm.
And it would just, hey, why are we going here? Oh, well, don't we don't need to think in that kind of detail. I would get responses like that, and it's like, well, no, we really do need to think about this. If we're running a trial and these are the people that are affected by this indication, why would you run it here? You know what I mean? Why wouldn't you include this person to make sure that they're going to make sure that the medication has them in mind? And so we have to really right now is a great time.
Hmm.
Right now is a great time to address it. And I don't think that hopefully we don't have another time like this where we have,
Yes.
where things are this crazy. But this is a good time for us to come together. It's a good
Yeah.
time for us to come together and and really start having those tough conversations.
Hmm.
Saying, hey, this is how we need to move forward. If we're going to move forward, we have to include everyone. It's that simple. You can't go into a community and your team lacks the representation, that community embodies, and then try to convince them to take something like that's going to be challenging. And it's hard for people to understand because there is no diversity in those decision making positions.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I mean, just one example. I mean, there's many, but one example is with prostate cancer. Twice as
Yep.
many African Americans get
Yes.
that, yet they're only represented, I read, 5% in a
Yep.
clinical trial. So, I mean, that's crazy. You know
It's
what I mean?
unbelievable.
So, even if that study has efficacy for 80% of that population, not necessarily 5% got 80% efficacy, right? So, I mean, I think what people have to realize is in terms of health equity, are these drugs and these new innovations and products that are coming out. I mean, we act differently with drugs, biology,
Right.
genetics, we're not all the same, and we definitely have to make sure that, and not just for the vaccine and not just for antivirals now, but in everything, right? We have
Yes.
loved ones that, family members or friends we know that have something, and
Right.
definitely don't want to have drugs coming out that may not work for them because we weren't represented, right?
It definitely does raise a question. It really does. I mean, when you look at all the drugs that have been approved, and when you go back and look at the data, it'll make you think to yourself like, you know, um, anybody take a look at this? I mean, I did it myself. I took the time,
Yeah.
and I went back and peeled back all these clinical trials, looked at the demographics and in terms of race and how they were recruited and all that stuff, and
Hmm.
it was mind blowing. I mean, it was truly mind blowing how many trials lack diversity. It was kind of scary, to be honest with you.
I think I read somewhere that there was I can't remember the medication now, but it was for women and sexual wellness. It was a drug, but it was done on a lot of men, not women. It was just crazy. But anyways, so I mean, so we kind of talked a little bit about some of the reasons why there's lack of diversity, feasibility, for example, using the same sites, doing clinical studies the same way. What are other reasons why we have a lack of diversity in clinical trials?
You know, I think a lot of it's not just the same sites. I think we also don't understand how important it is to really make sure that we usher different perspectives into the industry, um, create different avenues for people to become clinical research professionals,
Hmm.
because not everybody has the ability to go get a college degree.
Hmm.
To be honest with you, um, and we have to create a path where people can at least slowly get there.
Hmm.
Uh, because think about it this way: if no one in my like I didn't know like you said, I didn't know clinical research existed until I was maybe I, until I submitted my my resume and they caught me.
Yeah.
Like I heard of it, but it was always like this mysterious thing that like was in the background happening.
Hmm.
And we have to get to a point where we're creating those opportunities for people within the industry, because I can tell you this: if we have a lot of people, a more diverse industry, then they're going to go home and tell their parents about or tell their family about what's happening. And it's going to build trust. But you can't just build trust and nobody, and there's no representation in the industry.
Hmm.
There's no companies. They can't look at a company and say, "Hey, oh, this is led by Native American, or this is led by." We have to be able to say things like that before we can start to build trust.
Hmm.
And it's not something that can happen overnight. That's the thing. We can do certain mitigation strategies, but it's not something that we can just like snap our fingers and it's fixed.
Hmm. Yeah, well, you mentioned trust. That's a big issue, right?
Yeah.
Because let's just say we don't have a great history in clinical research when it comes to trust in minorities, right? So, definitely when you see people that look like you as, investigators and study teams, there's a comfort there. You want to, then you feel like you're part of it. You're inclusive of that experience. Is there anything else that from a trust building? Because that's a big issue. It's
Yeah,
people are very skeptical, indigenous as well. I mean, people are very skeptical of healthcare workers, and not everyone, I mean, in the US, it's a little different. We have universal healthcare here, but not everyone even has access to insurance and has access to a proper healthcare. So they don't even feel included in healthcare, never mind
exactly.
clinical trials.
Exactly, and the insurance part is another big issue too. A lot of the populations that are being hit the hardest are people who may not even have access to, the care, not let alone the trial,
Hmm.
the care to cover some of the stuff that may come with the trial. Like, it's just like it's so many layers to it. From an education perspective, from just uh, economics, like it's just poverty, all this stuff. Like
Hmm.
I tell people all the time. Growing up, I went to probably one of the roughest high schools in in my city. I've seen poverty. I've seen what it can do. I've seen how it can alter people's decision making. Like, people. It's just it's not a fun situation to be in. And then when you add lack of resources and all that stuff onto it, it's tough. And then you have people come to the community and say, hey, we need you to participate in this trial. You're looking like, no. You're like,
What, I'm gonna be a guinea pig? You're gonna give me something? I don't know what you're gonna
no.
give me.
I mean, we ran a survey in Ohio around COVID, and we found that of African Americans, so to speak, roughly 63% had a strong distrust for just vaccinations in terms of COVID,
Hmm.
and it was just mind blowing. It really shows, it really speaks to the challenges that we have in front of us. We in order for us to get over this, though, we have to be willing to. The quickest way we can get over this is to bring other people on board, bring
Hmm.
other companies on board that we may not be used to bringing on board,
Yeah.
and that's truly what it's going to take.
I'm now taking I don't even know if I've been asking you the questions, but I think we're kind of hitting them. So in terms of reasons why we don't have diverse representation as well, I mean, FDA put out a guidance this month, which
I
was
saw
nice
that.
to
Yes.
see. I mean, but it's a guidance, right?
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
do you think that will be impactful in any way?
I hope.
I hope so too.
I really do hope, because I looked at it and it had some really, really, really
Yeah.
good information in there. I mean, it's like they're hitting some good points. Um, I really hope they do, because I think my fear is that once COVID is over, we fall into that kind of, okay, so we figured it out. All right, let's get back to it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when it's something that we need to keep pushing. We need to continue to solve this problem across more than just COVID. We have
Hmm.
to solve this, and like you said, prostate cancer, all these other trials.
Yeah.
So I just don't want us to forget about
Hmm. Hmm.
it.
Yeah. I mean, I read it as well. There were some good tips. They talk about opening up eligibility. And I think that a lot of times people just got stuck on that. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And that's great, but there's so much more, right? Beyond that. And one of the things that was there were some interesting things there, like reaching out to the community, doing education in different
Yes,
communities. And
that's
that's
important.
great and all. But then we get back to sites who have that responsibility, and then when we go to sponsors, because there's budgets involved, and that's why that change has to happen all the way through.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
if you've been at a site, you know how they struggle. There's doctor,
It's
there's COVID going on, there's people coming in, and now they've got to do education to the community. They got to do this, they got to do that. It's great, but there has to be like all the way through that priority,
mhm.
and those strategies have to be in place. They
It-
talked about like patient focus groups. Like, these are all really great things. I mean, are you seeing any of these types of initiatives in your practice
so
now?
so my platform is essentially the way ClinArc is structured is we engage the communities.
Hmm.
You know, we put a face behind the trial. And it's not just, you know, they have to go to the site and meet this doctor that they're, you know, they're nervous to meet. No, we bring people on board from that community, teach them about clinical research, and they go back out into the communities and talk to their people, you know.
Hmm.
And that's just how we do it, you know. I think it's important to approach it that way,
Hmm.
because it also speaks to what I was telling you before, how, you know, if someone's involved in the industry, they're going to go back home and tell their family and all that stuff. I think we have to get creative with what we do, but and education, like education is important. That's important. Pulling in support groups is important, um, but we have to do a little more than that. We have to, like you said, it has to start at the top. And I am seeing from my engagements, there are sponsors that have come to ClinArc and said, hey, you know, we want to figure this out. We want to do this the right way, you know. And they have us, you know, look at protocols, you know, look at the how the protocols are written, to make sure that the community can understand it, to make sure that it speaks to the way they, you know,
Hmm.
process language and all
Yeah.
that good stuff. Also down to the marketing, we look at that, make sure that it's culturally relevant. Um, but it's a lot, you know, and it's not. And the thing is, it's not a cheap fix. Don't get me wrong. I know the. I'm not gonna say. I'm not gonna sit back here and say, oh, you know, we can you know, package it up for cheap. No, it's not cheap, but it's needed. And it's more efficient than, you know, just running ads and hoping people click on it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And you also get to build that trust, you know, by deploying people in the community that can speak to the people and build that trust, and
Hmm.
they already trust that individual, you know, versus, you know, let's just run ads over and
Yeah.
over again. it's,
Everyone's so focused on how that ad looks and the
it's like,
wording and
you
the
know,
ethics approval, as if it just magically will open the
I
doors.
will, you know, ads are important. Don't get ads are they're important, but it needs to be in combination with, like, me seeing people at the same time. You know,
Hmm.
you can't just run ad and I never see you. You know, I don't see your brand, like, out there anywhere. You know, and we, I think that plays a part. You know, I talk to the communities, and, you know, I get their raw feedback, and it's just, you know, we have to also make them feel included every step of the way. And it doesn't start with, you know, okay, it's time to recruit. Like, let's, you know, I'm talking about, like, we work with a sponsor now where they're just like, hey, we want to work on this study name. We want to come up with a name for this study.
Hmm.
Can you take this back to the community and see how they like this name? I'll go take it back to the community. They say, oh, absolutely not. And then, and then, you know, I'll take that feedback back to the sponsor. Then we go back to the drawing board. But really
Hmm.
making people feel included, because when you feel included, when you feel like you got to pick that, and you see it on the, you know,
Hmm.
clinical trials website, like, oh man, we help pick that. You know, it creates a different. It's different. It's inspiring versus just not. You just show up to my neighborhood, and you wanted me to sign up for what? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know who you are,
Yeah.
and I can't afford to do it. You know, so we just we have to take it we have to take it slow,
Yeah.
because if we try to go fast, we're absolutely going to mess up.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we have to do it with the people that are from those places. It's that simple.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. You talked about trust and awareness, right?
Yes.
Because some people don't even have a clue. I mean, I didn't even know about research really when I was working. And you know, there's some people that know that if they have a family member and they're sick and the existing treatments don't work, they know enough to go, okay, I'm going to call Dr. So-and-so and call the specialist and figure out a clinical trial. Other people would have no clue. They're like, okay, this is the end of the line. That's it.
This is
There's
it.
no hope.
Yeah.
You know, and so
Right.
even just general awareness that this thing is happening that you could be a part of and you're welcome to be part of, you know?
Right. And what our so we have community engagement specialists, and what they act as they represent essentially ambassadors within the community, right? So they're a contact person you can call. Hey,
Hmm.
are there any trials that are going on near me? You know, yeah, here, right at this university. It's that simple to have some, because truly, like, I didn't know that clinical trials was actually a thing until I was in my 20s. And that's
Yeah.
scary. You know,
Yeah.
that should not, our work is so important that it's like, that it needs to be, you need to know a little more about it, you know, sooner than that. It's just, we have to break down that barrier.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, even if somebody is aware of that clinical trial, like you said, from the protocol part, not everyone can go visit a site 20 times this month. Not
Right.
everybody can travel and have the
Sure.
expenses. Not everybody's just sitting at home just thinking, I have all the time in the world. You might have 2 jobs or whatever, and you might be nowhere near the facility, may not even be in the state that you're
Mm.
in to even be involved. And so, there's that burden
Right.
to people where, if they only can get to that site between 7 and 3 o'clock and they're working. So,
Mm.
that's kind of the flexibility in terms of how do you make it accessible to everybody?
Right. And you know, I'll tell you a story. So, you know, for me growing up, you know, like I said, I didn't grow up I wasn't rich or anything like
Hmm.
that. So my mom, like, we didn't have a car. It was just me and my mom when I was
Hmm.
around, up until when I was 5. It was just me and my mom. And you know, we would have to walk everywhere we went. So imagine, like, you know, throwing a clinical trial in there where I'm like, if you have to walk everywhere. So yeah, I can get in my car right now and drive to the UDF around the corner, or
Hmm.
drive to the corner store around the corner, and it'll take me 2 minutes. But if I have to walk there, it's gonna take me probably 15 minutes or 30 minutes.
Hmm.
You know, and we're not thinking like that. And we have to think about those things. You know, my mom would go to work, right? And if she couldn't find someone to watch me, I would, you know, she worked at Walgreens. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but she
Hmm.
would work at Walgreens, and I would sleep on the floor so she could work overtime, right? And
Hmm.
then she would, you know, go home, and we would have to carry our groceries. And it's just like, when you don't have those experiences, and
Hmm.
understand the nuances within the community and what those
Yeah.
people are dealing with, you can't really plan a trial for those people. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
You don't even know what they need. Like, you don't know. I mean, it could be as simple as, like, everybody here is probably going to need a ride. You know,
Yes.
so it's important that we include everyone.
Hmm.
That, you know, you can't plan a clinical trial and just everything be speed. Like, this needs to be a operation. Like, everybody needs to be at the table thinking this through. And that's why I say a lot of it starts at the feasibility, at the point when we start doing feasibility,
Yeah.
because that's when we determine, you know, how should we recruit patients? You know, how do we do retention? All that stuff that's when we need to start, you know, really trying to cater to the patient's needs, and developing understanding what those needs are going to be. But if you don't have those perspectives in the room to say, hey, I know what it's like to be very poor, and
Hmm.
you know, we probably should include this in there, or you know, it's just, it's tough. And a lot of times it was tough for me to watch some of these strategies be created, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm just sitting there like, this is
This excludes this person I know, this right. And the other thing that, in terms of, we talk about compensation and stuff, and some people don't like to discuss it, but I mean, it is reasonable to pay people for their time, especially if people are working. And just like us, if someone's asking me to go to a meeting and sit there for 2 hours, even if that's just a quick visit, that 2 hours means you can't go to work for like 3 hours. You got to take a break. I
exactly.
mean, it's completely reasonable to do that, to allow people to get compensated for taking that time out.
And if you're experiencing poverty, if you're experiencing any
Yes.
type of financial situation, 9 times out of 10, you're probably not gonna be salaried. So, like,
Yes.
you know, I'm working hourly, and you're asking me to join this trial. So every hour that I spend with you,
Hmm.
I'm losing money,
Yeah.
and I don't
And
have
if you
health
don't have a
insurance.
lot, you're not going to do that.
So it's like, and that's not to say that everyone in these areas
Yeah.
have that same struggle, but it is a thing, you know, and we have to be mindful of that.
I mean, we kind of talked about this already, but anything else that can be done to improve diversity, inclusion in clinical trials? We talked about trust, which is a big hurdle, which is kind of an ongoing issue, right? That's not going to be changing overnight for sure. But like you said, ensuring that there's more diversity, even in the teams and the investigators and all that kind of stuff. And then obviously the awareness, just even knowing. In terms of the awareness, we talk about advertisement. You talked about going into communities, having patient engagement representatives, even someone they could just call and just ask about what's going on and what studies are going on, and even ask questions to learn about what it is like to be a patient in a trial.
Exactly.
Some of the things that were mentioned in the FDA guidance is like social media as well. People, because right now social media is a huge thing. And people are on their phones 24/7.
Everyone's bored.
So, this is the first time I have to tell you with COVID that I'm actually seeing people do selfies like I got my vaccine. You know what I mean? Like,
No, you mentioned great point. I saw that today.
That.
I saw that on. I think it was on LinkedIn, and I'm looking like, this is different. I'm not used to seeing this.
Me too. It's like, I don't know if there's, I don't remember there's a hashtag attached to it. I don't remember, but I mean, I've never seen people do selfies of being in a clinical trial. Like, that's a whole new thing. So social media, or even getting people aware that don't even have really internet access. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much varying people on social media that have nothing, right?
Yes. And like I said, that's where we have to start really spending time on how we plan these trials.
Yes.
Because you're going to have people, if you want to deploy a remote option for a trial, and these people don't have high-speed internet.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, you should probably think about either providing high-speed internet for them or something. Like, I know it's kind of a touchy situation where you start to provide people with stuff, but I don't think people understand how tough it actually is when you're in these situations. And what a $60, internet bill for someone, that can spend $60 is not that bad, but $60 is just like, it could be a real headache for someone else. So we have to really think about those things and really take unconventional approaches to solving the issues for clinical trials, because every trial is different. And we can't approach it with the same single tools every time. And it takes new, fresh approaches each time to really solve the problems, because the more trials that we add, the more competitive it's going to become. We're going to be picking off of the same patients everywhere. We have to get creative. We have to also work with one another, because everyone's going to be working in the same space. So we have to know how to maneuver that space. And right now it's just a big clutter, and everyone's fighting for the patients. And it's just, we just have to take a deep breath.
Well, I mean, you mentioned something interesting when we talk about internet and remote trials. One of the last events we did was all about decentralized trials, virtual trials, etc. And, there is the ability to have more diversity, because now, the idea of going to someone's home as opposed to going to a facility has changed the game a bit, in the sense that you have internet access and you're seeing your investigator or study team virtually. There's just that ability to kind of be more flexible. If people are now, we have home tests going to people's homes and things like that. And now study teams, there was one study team I was talking to where I'm here in Ontario, and their coordinators are going to actual homes and stuff. So I don't know the extent of that, but I mean, definitely different to bring studies to people and communities. I mean, do you find that that's allowing a little bit more diversity and inclusion in clinical trials?
Yes, I think that is a very important tool, especially when you're going to places where resources are limited. Things like car, you can't drive and all that stuff. It's important. It's important to have that as an option. Maybe I can't get there today, and I want to work from home, or you just never know what someone's going to encounter. And I think remote is going to be very important. And just being able to bring the trial in every aspect, really bring the trial to the people. Whether it's, let me ask you, do you like this study name? Do you want remote, visits? Do you just really hug the community and see what they have to offer and add to the trial, because I think people in our industry will really be shocked at what they have to say and what
Mhm.
and how that can change so much.
Yeah, no, that's great. Anything kind of crazy you're seeing in terms of how to doing outreach in terms of interesting marketing or anything? Because I know we're very conservative in clinical research, in terms of what we do.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Um,
be honest. No, it's our ads are boring.
yes, I mean they put me to sleep, but
I
yeah,
saw
they are.
I saw a COVID ad on my phone and it had one like. It's and it wasn't surprising. I was looking at the ad like, well, this ad looks boring. you
Yeah.
know, it's just like a still picture and then like, hey, we're looking for this and call this number. It's like, that's not
Well,
gonna.
yeah, we all do the same thing. We pretty much in a lay terms explain the eligibility because it's very exciting.
Right, right. It's we have to have a little more personality with
Yes.
things that we do.
I
And
think
I
people
think,
want to see the team. They want to,
yeah, like,
we lack that kind of engagement. You know what I mean?
right, right. And I think that we have to just allow those personalities on our teams to really step forward and
Hmm.
really kind of be presented in the trial, so
Hmm.
to speak. Um, and I think it's important that people see the study teams, see not just the investigators. It's like they see everybody that's going to be participating.
Hmm.
Whether that's maybe the sponsor flies out to shake hands or something, talk to the people, laugh
Yeah.
with them. I don't
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but I think we have to really start to really open up our industry a little bit more,
Hmm.
and allow people to see how everything works, and really let the community see that we want change, that we want to, make things different, and improve, life for everyone,
Hmm.
really.
I almost feel like that's the key message and awareness to explain to people what happens when you're not being represented in a clinical trial. I think that's a key thing, because I think there's education at the level of the study, which is I think where we focus on, but we don't focus enough on what does it mean to be in a research, what does consent mean, what does it mean when we don't have diversity in clinical trials, and some of the outcomes of that. You know what I mean? Like there's not that type of
Right.
education, and not just to patients, communities, but even just to investigators. Like if we want to engage in more diverse investigators and things like that, and clinics that may not have necessarily been involved, but would be good sites to have and new sites to have, like you said, not the same sites all the time, but in communities where there are diverse communities, that's education that's important, investing in those relationships and investing in helping them with their first study. And so that we can bring
Exactly.
on these different sites.
Oh, you took the words out of my mouth. So I love that you said that. I look at it this way. When I first started riding a bike, I sucked.
Hmm.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
of course.
It's just that simple. When I first started out running my business, it was rough. I didn't know
Hmm.
anything. And I learned every day. But we learn,
Hmm.
and you don't learn unless you experience stuff.
Hmm.
So I have sites that see minority patients, they're minority physicians in our database. They contact me like, "Hey, we really want to get in the trial. Please, like, help us."
Yeah.
Like, they want to participate.
Yeah.
Nobody ever calls them.
Yeah.
And it's sad. Like, I had one site contact me. They said 90% of our patients are minorities.
Hmm.
And they don't get trials. It's just it's unbelievable, especially at a time where it's like we need those sites.
Hmm.
So we have to really open it up. We have to start thinking outside of the box
Hmm.
and um, actually ushering in those different perspectives that I was telling you about,
Yes.
those different minds and different age groups. Because if you may hire someone that's 21 and they know how to work things in ways that you probably couldn't even imagine. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
it's just and that's not to say that someone that's older doesn't add value. It's just like we all bring something to the table, and we
Hmm.
have to respect that enough and embrace it enough, and start to harness that to push the industry forward, so that we can come up with creative solutions to address the problems that we're facing, because right now we're doing the same thing right now. Like you're just talking about
Hmm.
the boring ads,
Yeah.
we have to get creative.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so if a sponsor was coming to you for a study, you definitely want them to engage with you early enough, right?
Yes.
So
So,
right in the beginning, not like, here's a study, we figured everything out. By the
yeah.
way, can you also make sure you get diverse populations? And you're just like, okay, but you've already figured it all out, right?
You know, let's underline that. Yeah, come to
Yes,
me first, please.
early in the planning.
Yeah, like so. Ideally, the way our model is set up is that, the sponsor can come to us, right, and we help them understand what needs to happen
Hmm.
from a feasibility perspective. We do all that stuff up front. So when they then go to pick vendors, you then know which vendor you need to be approaching, because you know which patients, where they're at, where the patients are at, where you need to be going, all that stuff.
Hmm.
Versus, picking everything and then coming to me, and then like you're, you're finding out along the way that
Hmm.
things things aren't aligned really.
Hmm.
And because what I'm seeing right now is that, since we're so focused on speed, like I said before, we're not picking the sites that have, patients,
Hmm.
they don't have access to a lot of the patients that some of the sponsors are looking at. And it's not the sponsors' fault. The sponsors are just trying to get their drug tested, and I understand that, but ideally we would like to for them to come to us early so we can
Hmm.
get the community involved, get the community's perspective, have time to do that.
Yeah.
Also, really help them create the marketing material that they need to, yeah, it has a little more personality in it, and do all that good stuff for them. But yeah, like you said, yeah, ideally we would love for them to come to us early so that we can help, address some of the issues, and help them mitigate some of the barriers that they may encounter.
Mhm. Well, even if we do something as simple as the marketing materials, at least have some diversity in the market. There's, I mean, open up any there are diverse pictures out there. You know what I mean? Don't have to use
Anything,
the same
please.
one.
Yeah,
Sometimes I've even sent it back to them and said, "Here are some other choices, perhaps that she might want to use."
I'm telling you, yeah, man, I see some of the marketing material. I mean, on my phone. Like I said, I'm a clinical researcher. I see it on my phone. I'm just like, oh my god, wow. It's just, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, how, like, put yourself in, like, if you saw this ad, would you click on it?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
or would you just say, whatever? Like, you really have to think about those things. Like,
yeah.
take yourself out of your skin for a second, out of your shoes, out of your situation, and put yourself in this situation, right? And really think, like, would I click on this ad if I was on the other side? Like,
Hmm.
and I don't think we really think about that sometimes, because a lot of the ads that I see are very boring,
Hmm.
and they're not like, they don't really resonate with the community that needs to see it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think I just want to highlight the sites thing as well. I think that's so important. Like you said, when you're learning to ride a bike, that site may not be successful in the first 6 months or 1 year, but now you've established the site for future studies. And I think that's
Right.
important. There's been some ads, when we talk about COVID, because everyone's always interested in that part of it. With vaccine companies are saying, we're trying to ensure diversity. We're trying, you know what I mean? That's great. But, they have to really put forth a real effort, a real organized effort to make sure that they do. I think it's great that there's a guidance, but I think that your study has to reflect the population that you're intending to market. I think that has to be there.
I, you know, I'm an analyst.
Hmm.
At heart, I'm an analyst. When they throw numbers out there in articles, I immediately look at their numbers and I say,
Hmm.
I see right through
Hmm.
it. You know what I mean? Like, I see through your numbers. I see what you're doing there. It's creative, but that does no. You're not slick with the numbers. I'll see articles where it's like, hey, 40% of our participants were minorities. Well, there's minorities. That's like you know, that's more than one race, you know. So like, so that could add up to what it was before, for all I know, you know.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like we don't think. I know what they're trying to do, you know,
Yeah.
and I know they mean well, and I know that I know the companies are trying, and they're back
Mhm.
against the corner, and I get it, but we really have to we just we gotta approach it differently. We have to approach it differently, and I think COVID has everyone scared, man. To be
Yeah.
honest with you,
But it is challenging. You have to race to get these things to market, right? And I mean, there's pressure to do that.
oh
There's
yeah,
also pressure to make sure it's diverse and inclusive. And now there's pressure that people can't go to sites. So now there's pressure of, I read something that some clinical trials have up to 5 different technologies they have to implement. So like we
and
have to
that's
be like IT specialists,
like
virtual specialists, recruitment specialists,
like
feasibility, and get it as fast as possible to market. I mean, that's a lot of challenges
and
too.
from a data perspective, if you're trying to implement 5 different technologies at one time, there is no way your data is good. Like, I don't
Well,
know
you got
how.
mobile wearable, you've got like
Like, I don't
EEG,
know.
you've got like
Like,
virtual monitoring, you've got some stuff hooked up to you from MedPace. I mean, you
yeah,
got
it's like,
so many things
you
going
know,
on.
and we have one of the things that I can't say that because it's
I know we have to be careful what we say.
yeah. So, well, no, it's like one of our 20-year plans, so to speak. But you
Yeah.
know, we have some special things, you know, that we have growing in my company, and it's around data. You know,
Mhm.
we have to get to a point where we have to get away from just like there are a lot of smart people that work on these trials,
Mhm.
but we all have to also look at the data. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like, we have to look at the data and say, okay, well, the data says this. I know your experience. You know, I get it, but we have to combine the data as well, combine the experience, and really make our decision. Because I've been in situations where I show the data, and I don't think, you know, and this is early in my career. They just, you know, project managers, they're focused on speed. They're just like, no,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? But it's like we have to really look at the data. The data at least tells you some of the answers.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think, if you're really good at kind of patient recruitment and retention, you're not only building data for that study, you're building data on how well that study has been conducted, how well a marketing ad works, how well a social media ad works. Like you've got to also look at all of those things. You know what I
And it all
mean?
needs to be integrated. That's the thing.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
all this data needs to be integrated. So
Hmm.
if it's not, when we run feasibilities, think about this. Every time, I'm sure you've seen, you know, people run feasibility. When you see these feasibilities, you look at all the stuff they collected, and then they run another feasibility, and
Hmm.
it's completely different from the last one. Then they run another, it's just like, so none of this, you know, like, so we're not capturing any of this. Like, it's just like, I have to go back to the spreadsheet 20 years later to
Hmm.
figure out what's going on here, and it may not even apply to anything you know, the doctor can't even go back in. It's just
Hmm.
we it's important that we think a little bit around how we collect the data for feasibility as well, and also make it easier on the sites. I'm not saying asking fewer questions,
Hmm.
make it so that you know, they don't they don't have to deal with it every time, you know,
Hmm.
because they do have a lot going on. Like I said, I experienced being at the site level,
Hmm.
and it's crazy. You know, it really is crazy when you're running a trial, and you're trying to hit time points and be a scientist, and
Hmm.
it's insane. And I think some of the times when a lot of the people that we have working on feasibilities, some of them may not have had that experience. So you're not thinking in terms of like, do you know what that feels like to be at that site? You know, doing that. Like,
Hmm.
it can be very hectic at times, and overwhelming.
Hmm. So if you had a family member or a friend that wanted to participate in clinical trials, what would be your advice? You'd be like, yeah, or no, hold up.
My honest my honest answer, or
Yeah, your honest answer.
well, let's see. My family is just like the rest of everyone else out here. I talk to my mom. I was like, hey, mom, what do you think? Would you ever, join one of these trials? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I talked to, cousins. Nope. I mean, and I have family members that have had COVID. Like they've tested positive for
Yeah.
COVID, and they did
And
not
still
join
no?
like they did not join the trial. None of that. These people would rather go back out and catch COVID again than go get it,
Wow.
than go to the trial. And but that just speaks to how we have to start. That's where the education part
Hmm.
becomes important because we have to make people feel comfortable. And I think education helps you understand that science is not out to get you.
Yeah.
It took for me to go to school and get my
Hmm.
degree in biology to really see to understand why science operates the way it does
Hmm.
and works the way it does. Because if you don't understand it, you'll be looking at it like, no, I'm not. No way. You hear, as soon as they hear, they clone this, it's going to scare everybody.
Yes.
Do not say clone. Anything that has clone in it, just don't say it, please. you know, like we have to. That's where, like I said, that's where the whole education thing comes in. We have to make people feel comfortable and really be strategic with the wording and everything that we use, because you could say one thing and it'll destroy everything.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. But yeah, and my family's no different. If you say one clone, any of that, it's over.
Hmm.
There's no chance. There's no chance that you're going to recruit them. And in terms of COVID, I don't know any of my family that would do it
Yeah.
outside of maybe myself. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't. You know, I've talked to people, and I had on my talk show, I had a guy in Atlanta, Georgia. He was on a Pfizer trial, African American. I think he has his degree in, I can't remember what he said, but he understood it. He works in the health field. He understood it. He
Right.
volunteered, but again, he understood it. You know what I
Right.
mean? So it was a no brainer for him. He's like, oh well, yeah, I want to be here for my children, so I'm going to
Right.
go ahead and sign up.
Hmm.
If this works, I want to be the first one that it works on.
Hmm.
So that was his way of thinking, but not everyone thinks like that.
Hmm.
And and we have to start allowing people to really have access to that information, enough information to become educated on what we're doing and become more comfortable with the process and really understand what phases are and
Yeah.
why and the regulations that we have in place so that
Yes.
things like Tuskegee don't happen again.
Yes. It's not like the old days.
I'm telling you, Tuskegee comes up every single time.
Yes.
Has been a big problem when I have the discussions. So we
Mhm.
have to really get past that. I think it starts with addressing that first. To be honest with you, like don't just start the discussion talking about the study. Say,
Mhm.
hey, I know, this happened. I know
And this is what
Tuskegee
we have in
happened
place.
and all this stuff. We're not trying to do that to you.
Yeah.
We just have to approach it, in a way that people feel a little more comfortable participating.
And explain it in a way that the language is appropriate. Sometimes
Exactly.
we use, CRC is going to call you, like we have this whole other language.
Well,
Like you
CRC.
said, don't use clone, don't we have to watch our language in terms of how we explain things and don't assume that people know things, right? Just because
Right,
we know this language and medical language and science
right,
language, just making sure that we're relatable and we can explain things in a way that people can understand in lay terms and all that kind of stuff.
right.
But one of the things I was reading recently is specific to COVID trials is that some people are saying that, well, if I go into this COVID trial
Mhm.
and help with this vaccine, what happens when it's to market? Are you going to remember these communities, or is it going to go to certain people that have insurance and it's not going to come to us? So why are we part of this when we're not going to be part of it when it goes to market? I think that's
That's a
valid
very
argument.
that is a very, very, very good argument. And that's one that we need to address. And
Hmm.
that's one that I think about every time. To
Yes,
be honest,
I mean that's a hard
I
one
think
because we don't have any
because
control over that.
it's like, wait, so I participate, help you get this completed, right? And then you forget about me.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I
it's
mean
like,
that's pretty valid. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, yeah. If I help you, if I help you get, this headache medication or migraine medication to market, I should get free migraine medicine. Like I should get some.
But then the drug comes out and was really helpful for me, but I don't have an insurance and I can't even
Yeah,
afford.
well,
Okay.
can't use it anymore. Sorry.
Yeah. 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 So
Yeah,
yeah, it's interesting. It's we do this to ensure that we're meeting the population, but when it actually gets to market, it's not available for the population.
right,
You know what I
right.
mean? Which is crazy. Yeah.
And yeah, no, I mean, you make that is a great point. We and I think that goes to us. We need to revisit. We need to really revisit what we're able to do for people
Yes.
for these trials,
Yes.
because the, the regulations that we have in place actually it hinders our ability to
Yes.
recruit people that are in underserved communities. If I'm underserved, man, I need you to make this medication free for me. You know what I mean? I need a stipend when I join this trial, because
Yeah.
I make $7 an hour. You know what I mean? So it's
It's like
it's just that
extensive
simple.
compassionate program
Yeah,
available.
it's like I'm not asking you to convince me to. If I want to join no matter how much you offer me, I know you're not gonna offer me $1 million to join the trial. If you do, yeah, that's what I would. That's crazy.
Mhm.
But offer me, something similar. That's, I can say, well, this makes sense. I can miss work to do this.
Mhm.
But we don't really think about stuff that way, and we
Yeah.
have to, because like I said, we are working against ourselves in terms of what we're able to offer patients, because we're not able to meet their needs.
Mhm. Mhm. So I don't know. Did I hit everything that you said? Mistrust. So trust.
Trust, yeah,
Awareness. What was the
awareness,
third one?
access. I know
Okay.
access is one.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think those are the important things that we have to think about.
Yeah.
Access, awareness, and trust.
And
If
culture. I think you've also mentioned culture.
Yes,
Understanding culture.
culture,
Yeah.
culture. So the culture becomes important, right?
Mhm.
When on our end,
Mhm.
because we're not experiencing other cultures in our
Yeah.
industry. We're not allowing those cultures to really, um, I guess, present themselves, so to speak, in our industry. Then we're not going to understand, how to when we come into a situation where we have to be able to create the content that speaks to that culture, in order to, get our message across.
Mhm.
We're not going to be able to do that, because we're not allowed to be like, I feel like when I'm in this industry, some of the times, I haven't been able to really express who I am, as an African American man, and we have to get past that, because I do think differently. My
Mhm.
perspective is completely different
Yeah.
from from most of the people in our industry.
Mhm.
So, but it's not unique. That's the thing. The way I think is not unique. It's just nobody where I'm from gets the opportunity to do what I'm doing.
Mhm.
So it's it's a tricky situation.
Mhm.
But I think culture, access, really, just trying to include people. I think we'll make progress, but we have to keep going. Like we
Yeah.
really do. We have to keep. We can't let up after COVID. We can't. We have to keep pushing it along, and we have to have we have to have sponsors that are willing to say, "Hey, put this on the budget." you
Yeah.
know,
This is important.
yeah, but put this on the budget. Let's do this, or let's
Mhm.
try this. Maybe that'll work, because right now, no idea is a bad idea. I mean, just try it.
Mhm.
Include the community.
Try something different.
Yeah, yeah. It's that simple. We can't rely on one thing and expect a different result. And
Mhm.
it's that simple. We have to get creative. We have to rely on innovative solutions. And to be honest with you, some of those solutions may not even be what we think it is. It may not
Mhm.
be AI. it may be something as simple as going to the communities and shaking people's hands,
Yeah.
and talking to people. So we just have to find the balance and be willing to go the extra mile for the people that need it.
Yeah. Well, I want to say thank you so much. I
Absolutely.
know this is late in the evening for you, but
Oh,
thank you
no, you're
so much
fine.
for making the time and great conversation. This is great. And I know some people might listen to this a little later, but we're November, 13th now. We have November 26th. We have our event where we're going to talk to Adam a little bit more. We're going to also talk about Indigenous research as well, community-led research. So really looking forward to that. So we get to talk again, which is great. So we're going to
Absolutely, I can't
probably,
wait.
what was that?
I said absolutely, I can't wait.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Adam. You have a great night,
Absolutely,
and
you too.
you got to let me know when you get your new arrival. Wait,
Absolutely, I
what's the
will.
date? It's not 26, is it?
No, it's the 27th. It's
Oh,
the
well, you have
27th.
lots of time.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I got a couple weeks. I got a couple weeks. I'm sweating a little bit, but I'll get through it.
All right. Take care.
All right, you have a good one.
All right.